This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 610 with Rich Hay, recorded on May 30th, 2024. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way in your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the Average Guy.TV studios here in beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. Best time of the year in Nebraska is this time right now. And, of course, we'll post the show with some world-class show notes out of the AverageGuy.tv. Big thanks to Gretchen Schoenstein, who joined me last week. I got some good comments on that. I'll read those, maybe on a show in a couple weeks, but appreciate Gretchen coming on and sharing her story. And, of course, big thanks to our Patreon subscribers who support the show on a monthly basis. If you want to join the Patreon team, the AverageGuy.tv/Patreon. I've got a $5 plan. You can do it for a month or as long as you want. For those of you who've been on the team for a while, and many of you have, thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate your support and what you do. And again, if you want to join that, the AverageGuy.tv/Patreon. All right, I mentioned Rich Hay is with us. And Rich, as I didn't think it had been 2 years since we'd seen you, but I was looking back, and sure enough, it was April of 2022. And welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Let's catch up with you a little bit. I think last time we saw you, you'd been at Microsoft for 6 months. You're doing a ton of stuff.
Catch us up at that point, because I joined in October of 2021. Got hired as the community manager for the Microsoft Q&A platform. So April would have been right around that 6 or 7 month mark. Now it's been over 2.5 years that I've been with Microsoft. I am also at this timing at the tail end of my time at Microsoft. I've decided to leave. July 1st will be my last day at Microsoft.
Wow.
Because in the 2 years since I last was on the show, when I was last on the show, I was still in the final months of my preparation and formation to be ordained deacon in the Roman Catholic Church. That happened in June of that year. And so, you know, I continue to do my day job. It's kind of what we do as deacons in the church. We have a foot in the secular world and a foot in the church. And, but I have recently decided that it's time to move more into full time with my ministry. And so leaving Microsoft, which has been an absolutely terrific experience. I'm always going to be able to say I was a softie, right? I spent time there and worked there. It's been a tremendous experience. I'm on a great team. I'm going to miss those folks. But I'm ready to move on from that. I'm ready to be done with basically the corporate world and all the other. I'm lucky to be a retired Navy guy. So, you know, I'm blessed that I got that. But so I'm excited about the opportunities in the future. I'm finally going to it's been over 2 years, 2.5 years since I blogged and podcasted, except for blogging about getting hired by Microsoft. Funny story. I did those blogs. It was like what it was like getting hired, to going through the hiring process, the interview process, coming on board and all that kind of stuff. A guy who joined our team in my first 6 months at Microsoft made him and his wife made their final decision about taking the job at Microsoft when it was offered, because he read my blog about joining Microsoft. His wife found it and told him about it. And that's the reason why he accepted the job, was seeing what I was experiencing. So I'm looking forward to getting back to blogging about technology. I've just kind of felt over the last 2.5 years that it just wasn't a place for me to be commenting at that time. I'm going to get back into podcasting. My Faith, Tech, and Space podcast is kind of in idle. I think I got to 20 or 21 episodes with that. Because, you know, for the longest time I had my other podcast, how far along? 300 episodes or something like that. I think I got with that. Observe Tech.
And
so I'm excited to get back into those things, as well as, you know, doing other stuff and maybe some traveling, you know what, and doing some things like that.
Let me say congratulations on the work with the church. I mean, that's what you went through to get to that point. And I remember talking to you back in April of 2022, and this wasn't a weekend seminar.
6 years, 6 total years of formation.
So congratulations on that. And I'm glad you're enjoying that part of your life and needed. And I'm glad it worked out for you, and you're enjoying that. even tonight you were doing some work. As we were chatting.
I was, yeah. And prior to this, I had a funeral vigil for one of our parishioners at the funeral home.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
But hey, I also get to baptize babies.
Oh, great.
I get to, I can marry people, witness their vows. Of course, I can do a lot of various things. There's some I can't do because I'm not a priest, but that's okay. Deacons are meant to be servants and to serve in any way we can. And that's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, I always think of it in the Star Trek terms as number one. The second in command was always the number one. Yeah. And I like that position better than I like being the
deacon's not in charge, which isn't a bad thing.
But you get to do a lot of stuff, right?
I do,
yeah. So being
very fulfilling, though. I really enjoy it.
Being a number one is awesome. Well, congratulations on that, Rich. Always great. And as you get going again on your podcast, ping me. And as you get that going again, we'll have you back on. And we'll talk about that. We'll get folks to kind of re-energize on that. I know a lot of the listeners here at Home Gadget Geeks were also listeners of your podcast. So let me know as you get that started again. I appreciate also that thought of you're thinking about the last 2 years and just not in the blog podcast space. And I think it's okay just to kind of take a break and say, you know what, not right now. And then I think it's also great to say, oh, but now is the time, and I'm going to start it back up again. I think sometimes we think on these things that you do them and then they're done and then you never do them again. And I'm thinking, no, maybe it's for some it works to come back. So we'll hope for.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I know there's some listeners here who will be like, yes, Rich is coming back.
I think of my very dear friend Joost over in the Netherlands. Joost was an MVP. Got to know him over at Summit and stuff like that. Hey, who knows? Mm-hmm. I've known some softies who left the company that become MVPs again.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
you never know.
Not my goal, but
no, right on with all the stuff that's going on at Microsoft, and so you never Joost, man. I haven't thought about Joost in
Joost
in
right?
a while.
So,
I met Joost.
And so he was always one that I thought about when I was podcast. For whatever reason, he was always the face I had in my head as I podcasted because I knew he was going to listen right when it came out, and he was going to ping me about it after he listened.
Yeah. No, those bring back some days. My daughter just reminded me the other day. I think I told her I was having you on the show, and she was like, remember, Dad, when you were an MVP and you got these, these awards and these stackable year, things that you'd get.
Yep. I got mine up there on a shelf right over here over my Microsoft workstation.
Right above me up there. And I kind of keep them it's just hard to get rid of those.
12 years I was an MVP before I joined Microsoft.
Some good years. Well, we're not going to talk about anything Microsoft or anything Windows tonight, although there's a lot to talk about in that space, and maybe we'll have you back on. There really is. But you said something that was intriguing to me, and it kind of sparked. I've always had a kind of an interest in space. We've had the last two. You think about over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had 2 full solar eclipses that have made their way through the United States.
Yep.
Which have been solar eclipse. Is that right? It's
solar eclipse.
Solar eclipse, right? Yeah.
Or
takes out the
solar eclipse.
Yeah. For a second, I was like, is that the right thing? My daughter got the chance to see the first one. In fact, she was not too far from Bill Nye the Science Guy down in Kansas for that one. And then
I saw that one in South Carolina.
Did you go? Did you see it?
We drove up to South Carolina to Santee, South Carolina, right off of 95 Totality. So maybe 6 hours drive from us.
Okay. Oh, not far. Yeah, not far. This one came up through Mexico and across
Texas up to the
Texas
northeast.
Through Nebraska, not quite through Nebraska. We could see some of it here. We had 88% or so.
Same in Florida. We had like 66%, but I flew to Dallas for it.
Okay. And did you see Totality?
Totality. I watched from the Dallas Cowboys world headquarters.
Wow.
On the same field that Jerry Jones was standing on, and his son and players and coaches. And
you're on the field?
Yeah. On the practice field in Frisco, Texas.
Okay.
I went and joined a retired Microsoft buddy of mine, Daryl Pritchard, who I've known for years. He retired earlier this year. And so I went over and joined him to watch it. He picked me up and drove me around and did all that stuff. Yeah. It was cool. It was a great experience. And I've already decided in 2 years I'm going to be in northern Spain.
Oh, yeah.
Watch the total over in Spain in 26.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few coming up. I think
There are. They
26.
got like 3 crossing, either partial or totals.
Yeah. Yeah. The US, I think we're done till like 2040 or 2045.
2045 or
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah.
like 21 years.
Yeah. Well, certainly having that in the US has kind of rejuvenated some interest in this. And of course,
Yes.
going outside, I mean, in these days, you can take your phone and look up at the sky. I mean, you can do, you and I before the show were talking about, of course, that the Aurora Borealis came down, right? We had that, the sun,
That sunspot, that massive sunspot, group of sunspots.
Coronal ejection or something
That's
like
correct.
that.
Coronal mass ejection.
Yeah.
That's what hits our atmosphere magnetic.
Did you see it in Florida?
I did not. So this is the one time owning an electrical car that I didn't have the proper charge on to be able to go to the dark sky spot to go see if it was there. So 24 hours later, I made that drive and it wasn't visible.
Yeah.
So, but of course, you saw photos as far south as Key West and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Southwest Florida, people were seeing it.
Yeah.
Of course, the cameras are much more sensitive than our eyes. And so what you might not see with your eye, you could see in a camera. That same sunspot group has been renamed and it's just come back to the face of the sun.
Oh.
And in fact, as it became visible, it threw off a couple massive coronal mass ejections, but they weren't Earth facing.
Okay.
So as it continues to rotate towards Earth facing, we could potentially see, if it maintains that strength, the possibility exists that we could have another opportunity.
Wow. Yeah. I went out, took my phone. I couldn't see it. Here in Nebraska, plenty of people who saw it.
Yeah.
I just didn't catch it at the right time, but I put my phone up. The sky was purple.
Yep.
And so it's like, oh, that's interesting. And but it has brought back, I think it's brought back a lot of interest in space. You mentioned to me, you've been using, and God, this is a dream for me. You've been using a completely, I want to say autonomous, but you've been using a new microscope. I'm going to show it on screen, but talk a little bit about what you've been doing, how long you've been using this new telescope.
So I wasn't even aware that these things existed, right? I used to own a big 6-inch Dob that they manually pointed at stuff and looked at the night sky, the moon, stars, clusters, stuff like that. These smart telescopes is starting to become more and more of a norm for these smart telescopes to be created. So I bought myself the Vespera Passengers. It was a limited run telescope. Only 222 were made. I got number 157 out of the group, and it has Wi-Fi on board. My version came with the tripod, everything that it needed, and you connect by app to the telescope through its Wi-Fi, and you do everything. You control it from the phone. So as long as you're within Wi-Fi range, you can control and see what's happening on the scope. No eyepiece on it, right? It's just the arm and the power button, and it gets the image. So you scroll your phone, you pick the image you want to look at, and then you tell it to go there, and it finds it. It knows where it's at, GPS location. It aligns itself using star maps, and so it knows what it's looking at. And the app will tell you whether something's visible or not visible, or whether it's kind of visible. So it's great. And you tell it, okay, I want to look at that one. You click it, it goes, finds it, it focuses the telescope, and then it starts collecting images, one every 10 seconds. And in astrophotography, the secret to astrophotography is stacking multiple images. Because as you get more and more images, you get more detail, you get more data, and you're able to pull together a more concise view of what you're looking at, what's being seen by the scope. And so I have been blown away, and I wish I had them. I might have them. I'll have to. It blows me away, the quality of these images. I tried for years to do my own photography on a telescope. This makes it so much more accessible to people. Just everyday folks who want to be able to try to do something like that. And of course, we'll look at the sun, so you can see the sun and sunspots. It's got a sun filter for it as well.
Wow.
There's a couple filter options for the one I got for the Vesperas. One is a light filter that helps to get rid of the wavelengths of local street lights and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then it has a filter that makes it easier to see nebula and that type of stuff. So those kind of images I'm getting, like you're showing right there, that's part of the Orion Nebula. right there. And that was the Rose or Flame Nebula. That's how good the images are coming off of this telescope. That's the Rosette Nebula right there. And that's the kind of quality you get. Some of them are pretty easy to get quickly, 10, 20, 30 minutes of observation. A lot of folks that use these things will do multiple nights worth of observation because, again, the more data you have to stack, the better quality the image is in the long run.
And so I'm assuming too, if you're out in an evening and you're stacking these images, it's also tracking if it needs to.
That's correct. It moves along with the image to keep it centered. This telescope happens to have a feature where you can actually control the field of view to kind of zoom in a little bit if you wanted to, or expand. And they're impressive. They're really impressive. And like I said, I never knew it existed even, right? Because I was always a traditional telescope type. And there's plenty of those that do go-to tracking and have smart handheld computers on them that will help to track and stuff. But these, and you'll find the professional astrophotographers will call these the poor man version, and I'm okay with that because it's allowing me to connect in a way with the night sky that I never had been able to before. And think about this. What about on a cold night? Right? Set that bad boy up outside. It's got its own battery, so it'll run for a certain amount of time on its own, but you can also plug it in and give it constant feeded power and set in your house in the warmth with your app or your tablet and watch what's happening, save pictures, do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, when I was, 13, 14, I went out on a stargazing expedition. This would have been 80s, 80, 81, 82, somewhere in there. And it was traditional, and they had a big, the Don Machholz, the guy I went with, who now has a comet named after him, which is super cool. But he was out with a traditional telescope. So, 5 feet long on a tripod. He would follow, he'd be doing things, moving it and marking things down and doing some stuff. And that was all super cool. But at about, 1 a.m, it got really cold. I was like, and he was super kind to me. He had brought some hot chocolate and, he told me this was in the Bay Area, but it still got cold in the evenings. And it was a clear night. So it was extra cold. And I always thought, Rich, man, it'd be so nice to have a remote controlled telescope. And we've had John Larson on the program before. John's gone out to various areas. We've talked about telescope. He does more traditional, but he's also got some digital stuff with it. I showed the pictures. Rich, this looks like about the size of a backpack. Is that kind of?
It is. In fact, it comes with a backpack. And so it's probably about this big. What is that? 2 foot, 2 foot, 2.5,
24 inches, let's say.
Yeah,
the size of a backpack, of a normal
it comes
backpack.
with a backpack that it can go in and be carried with you. Yeah. I'm just, I can drop you a link here in the
you
chat,
can share,
right?
you can share your screen if you want to. You can.
I just sent you a tweet that I sent last December after doing some of my first collections on this scope. It includes the Andromeda Galaxy, Orion Nebula, the North American Nebula, and the Veil Nebula.
Yeah, let me show this
and just it will blow you away with the number of stars. Andromeda is a great target because it's one of the biggest, right? It's closest to us. So if you were to click on one of those and just open it up, so you can even, so it picks up the core. It even down at the bottom of that image, it picks up a secondary galaxy that's near the Andromeda. And then you can even see some of the dark lines of the dark nebula that's part of it. And then all of these are stars. All those points of light are stars.
That's crazy.
And there's the Orion Nebula. So that's looking at the nebula that comes off Orion's belt or his sword. And then the others are a little lighter. This is called the North American Nebula because it looks a bit like these were very short collections.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't spend a lot of time on them. The more time you invest in them, the better they will come out.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Veil Nebula right there. Yeah. So it's crazy. I'd never been able to capture images like that before.
Do you think you could set something up like this and go like set it on a schedule and then just leave it out all night and it would do its thing and then you
It
could
in
collect the
fact
image?
the app has the capability to plan your observations for the night. So you obviously can't put it out until the sun's so far down below the horizon because it won't align. It won't align with because it needs to be well after sunset.
It's got to find the stars, right?
Yeah.
It's going to go out and find some stars.
And so, yeah, you can actually plan your observing, tell it how long to spend on a certain spot, and then tell it to move to the next.
Yeah.
You to plan. I've not used that feature yet myself, but it allows you to plan your evening's observation and collections.
Yeah, no, I'd imagine, for those of us, I get a little sleepy in the evenings and I can make it till maybe about midnight, but some of the best viewing is between midnight and maybe 4 a.m. And so set those. You mentioned it does have it has some battery in it, right?
Yeah, it's got its own battery. I mean, I can for just a normal evening of a few hours of observing, the onboard battery just does fine. Does just fine.
Yeah.
But it's a USB-C charge, so I can actually plug a USB-C charger into that and put a power bank on it, for instance.
Yeah.
Or I can give it straight house power, 110.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, run an extension cord out to it.
Exactly.
It can't be that intensive of a power draw. You don't think?
No,
right?
I don't think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I was showing these earlier, and actually, these are okay for some of you listening. You're going to be like, "Ouch." And by the way, they're not a sponsor. We don't get anything for this. This is what Rich has, but $1,800 to $2,000. Well, it's even $1,700 if you don't want the tripod, but maybe you have your own tripod.
It's a standard screw tripod like you would use for your DSLR or something like that.
Oh, if you had a tripod already, I've got a couple of them for some of the things I've done. 1,700.
And other companies are making these too. Some of the more traditional telescope companies have started to release these. There's like the light pollution filter, which I do have. That hygrometer sensor is for keeping dew off the lens. So it warms up the lens area around the lens to keep dew from forming.
Oh, yeah.
And it all plugs into the end of the articulating arm where the optics are. The dual band filter helps to process the nebulae and stuff like that. Yeah.
Would you say this is kind of an average guy thing? I mean, do you think?
I think it would be from that perspective. I mean, look, depending on, these things are so versatile. They're portable. They're easy to move about. You can see the backpack right there. I've got that lower left backpack. They sent it as part of the kind of deal for it. But, so I can pack this in there, grab a tripod, and take it with me easily in the car to go somewhere. And I take it right out my back door of my sliding door of my place by the living room, turn off all the internal lights, let it get out there and start observing and just let it do its thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it is an average guy thing because average guys are techies. I think we all enjoy having tech that makes accessing things like this. We've seen the images from the new James Webb telescope, right? Space telescope or Hubble. And I'm not kidding you. It kind of feels like you're at the end of the Hubble as you're seeing some of these images come through. And it just, I've got another shot somewhere of a really nice close up of the Horsehead Nebula, which is part of the Orion. Where is he at? I definitely would say yes to that.
You mentioned you could point it right at the sun. Is that true?
With the solar filter installed, so it's got built-in firmware protections that if you don't have the solar filter installed, because they're electronic, so there's a little sensor that identifies it as whatever filter it is, whether it's the light filter, the nebula filter, or the sun filter. And so if it's not sensing a sun filter, it won't power up to align with the sun. And so you have to install that in order to get it aligned during the day. But yeah, once it finds the sun, it will track the sun for you. And you can snapshot. I got a picture of the sun with that big, massive
the coronal ejection
where all the aurora is being generated from.
Right.
It is such fun to see that kind of detail, right?
Yeah.
And so they released a firmware update for the Eclipse.
Oh,
so that you could remove the sun filter during the eclipse.
okay.
But of course, they made you agree that, all right, if you screw it up, not us.
Right.
We're giving you this ability. Right. And I was going to take my scope with me, but when I learned where we were going to watch the total eclipse from in Dallas, they didn't allow tripods. So I couldn't have taken it in there to do it. Yeah. I actually snapped the shots I got of the eclipse with my S24, my Ultra.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the phone cameras actually do a pretty good job of.
They do an excellent job.
They do.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even handheld, looking at, the night sky.
Yeah. No, you can see some amazing things with your phone, pointing it up towards the sky.
Yep.
Of course, you think about those apps, the star apps, where you can kind of hold it up, take your phone up, and I forget which one
it'll tell you what you're looking at.
Yeah, and it'll even track International Space Station. We the other night, this was a while ago, maybe 6 months ago, but the other night we were out doing a fire pit, and I had a couple of the kids with me. It was dark. It was early spring, so it was cold. We were out there, huddling around the fire. But we saw the string of pearls,
the train, the Starlink train.
The Starlink train, yeah.
Yep.
They had just launched it the day before.
Yep.
And they were not far apart from each other, and you could see them come
not
across.
At all.
And it was really the most surreal experience. I looked up, and they're like, "Hey, look! I mean, it's these Starlink satellites," and across they go. It was super cool.
So I'm in a place where I can look out my front window and I can see the launches from Cape Canaveral. It was actually totally by accident I saw my first Starlink train. I was outside. I had the new scope out after having just received the Vespera, and I was out there doing learning how to use it, doing some observations. And I looked to the west, and suddenly I'm used to seeing ISS. I often go out to see the space station go by. And this was just a line of dots. And for about 30 seconds, I'm like, what on earth is that? And then it dawned on me that it was the Starlink train. There is, in fact, an app called Find Starlink that you can put on your phone, and will tell you when the Starlink trains will come by and be visible.
Wow. That's super cool.
Crazy.
It is. It's super cool. Although I do worry sometimes. We have too many. There's a
lot of stuff in low Earth orbit.
There is a lot of stuff up there. You kind of wonder,
and Elon Musk and SpaceX has put a lot of them up there with Starlink.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I hope they're hoping by tracking all that stuff too. I mean, they're constantly, I don't know, Space Command is always watching that stuff. And there are times something like, and they track, I can't remember the site, but they track the number of times the International Space Station has to make a maneuver, right? It's like, it's, and we keep putting more stuff up there, but it is fascinating. Do you, it looks like they have a new one too, available for pre-order.
Vespera Pro.
Yeah.
Right?
The Pro,
that's
the Pro
their latest
version.
one. So that one actually upgrades some of the optics, some of the resolution, things like that.
25 megapixels. 25 megapixels on that one. Yeah. Are you tempted at all to?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I'm very happy with the Passenger. It does exactly what I want to be able to do. And we were talking about whether this is an average guy kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is a piece of gear, a piece of technology. They actually launched their first smart scope via crowdfunding. I forget which site they used, but they launched their first one. Their first thing they made was where you could take a smartphone and put it on the device to capture the images with your smartphone, and all it was the lens that gave you the view.
Mm-hmm.
And then later they incorporated the camera and the collection, the CCD. That's a shot from last month when that great big huge sunspot group. That sunspot group on the right was the one that spit out all the stuff towards Earth that created all the auroras, and being able to see the aurora so far south. Yeah. That is 200,000 miles or kilometers in size. That big blotch of black.
Isn't that crazy?
Is unreal size.
Yeah. When you start thinking about the size of these kinds of things.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
And this is a picture from my Vespera using the sun filter.
Oh, Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good photo.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you're listening to the audio, head over to youtube.com/Jim Collison. I think we'll get you to my YouTube channel. You can come out, watch the video of this, see some of the video pieces to get it done. You gave me one more link. Let me throw that in there.
Yeah, that was just a shot of the solar eclipse.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
Where I was watching in Dallas.
So this is from Dallas. I'm assuming this is in. How cool is it that Dallas was in the path of totality, right?
Yeah. And for me, that was an easy flight.
Yeah.
It's direct.
Yeah. Did it get dark? Did it feel different?
Oh, definitively different. I did shoot a couple of shots that kind of give a sense, but our smoke film cameras are really good at, compensating for, right? Yes. So like, for instance, that shot you just showed, that's the Cowboys practice facility. And so all the office lights came on. So, as it got darker and darker, all these lights started to come on in the building itself. But yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, all the auto lights. Yeah, you don't think about that, right?
Yep.
The street lights come on and some of those kinds of things.
The birds stop. It gets cool. Happen. It cooled down significantly.
Really?
If you've never been in Totality, it cools down a good 10 degrees or so as it's happening.
How long is it?
We were in, I think, just under 3 minutes of Totality where we were, so the path, Dallas was kind of on the northwestern side of the path. And then San Antonio and Austin were on the other end of it. So you would have had to travel maybe a couple hours to get to center with almost 4.5 minutes of Totality. Mm-hmm. But they expected traffic to be an absolute madhouse.
Well, it's always bad, Dallas.
Because it was very rural areas in Texas that was crossing there, especially around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and San Antonio, Austin, and stuff like that.
A YouTuber I watch up in Pennsylvania, that was another area that got Totality. In the morning, the interstates were already jammed.
Right.
They were predicting you would never get to that spot before Totality hit if you stayed in traffic. Yeah. And so there was, I saw the map of the Airbnbs.
Did you see that? Was that not a great display of data? Right. Truly to show how much everything was booked near the path of Totality.
Yeah.
Thought that was the coolest picture.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to? I mean, what's on when you think about this telescope, what's left to be done for you? What other kinds of things would you like to do with it?
Well, there are a lot of targets that require a lot longer collection periods, 120 minutes or so. And while I don't know, I've messed around with stacking images myself. What a lot of guys do with these smart telescopes is they do collections over multiple nights, because what the telescope does is it collects JPEGs, lossless, as best lossless, right? And then it stacks, but it saves every one of those images once every 10 seconds. But then when you tap on, there's an option to take a picture of what you got so far. And so it will take a picture of that moment. But you can go back in, and because what stacking is, it's basically the average of the best of every image that it gets. And so there are software programs that you can do stacking in. I would like to get better at post-editing some of this stuff to help get rid of some of the superfluous stuff that to help deal with some of the artifacts that show up because of lighting and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd like to do some targets that take a little longer to collect, when I've got time to be able to just let it do it and see what happens with that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we need to remember, we see all these awesome images from NASA or Hubble or now the James Webb telescope. Those aren't actual pictures. I mean, they are, but NASA does a lot. There's work to be done to get them.
They
do a lot of cleanup. I think
color corrections, stuff like that.
We often look at them and go, if I could just see that, and you're like, it actually doesn't look that way.
Right.
There's some, I don't want to say an artist representation of it, but there is some. They clean those up quite significantly.
The data's there to give you what the true colors are, and so they're able to adjust it. I would challenge somebody that if they wanted to get a sense of what it looks like to the quote-unquote naked eye, grab a pair of binoculars. Look at Orion. So Orion's a very recognizable constellation, especially in the winter sky. It's not so much in the summertime. but look towards so Orion has a belt, and then there's a line of about 3 very visible stars running down from the belt. That's part of quote unquote his sword. That's where M42 is. That's where the Orion Nebula is. And that includes the Flame Nebula, the Horsehead Nebula, and other elements of it. But look in the telescope, look in the binoculars at that area, and just kind of like look off. You remember how we used to have to cross our eyes to see those weird images, in 3D? Yeah. It's kind of that way. You've got to kind of look off axis, and you'll see, but it'll look gray. You only get the colors over long term seeing the image, right? Multiple collection and stuff, the images collected and then stacked together to get the truer image.
Rich, do you think for something like this, certainly you said you could do it on your phone. I'm not very effective on my phone. Could I do it on a bigger device? Could I get it on my computer?
Tablet, not computer. It is an app. So you've got to have a tablet. It's available for the Apple stuff. It's available for Android. I have a 6-inch or a 10-inch, Android tablet that I have the app on. So if I wanted to, I could use my tablet to do it.
That's kind of the way to do it.
Up to 6 or 7 people can log into the Wi-Fi at the same time. One person's the control, right? Whoever the main person is, but then 6 other people can join and watch what's going on the telescope.
Oh, then they wouldn't have to be local. Could I log in like
Wi-Fi?
Okay, so I could
stream that. Potentially, you could stream what you were seeing. It was as it was happening.
Yeah,
but locally, 7 people can connect to the telescope's Wi-Fi,
right,
and with the app and see the results that are happening live.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool to be able to, I have this BirdFi hummingbird feeder that you can take pictures of these birds coming in, with these hummingbirds, and it's pretty great. Then they have a community associated with it, so I can quickly on the app send those pictures, cool ones, to the community where people can see them. But in your setting, and John Larson was talking about this last time he was on, it would be cool if you could set up your telescope and publish, maybe privately, but publish the IP address or whatever, where you could grant me permission and I could come in and see what you're doing. Maybe not even do anything, but come in and see what you're seeing in your location, and vice versa, right? If I had one, you could come and set it up in the night sky. I think Justin said it'd be great to be able to program it so you can track it for hours over multiple days and get the data.
Yeah, I think what most people would do. Yeah, I mean, certainly you could do that. I mean, there's risks, and again, I'm not going to leave my $1,700 telescope outside when I'm not home. Yeah. But the beautiful part of this is that you take it back out, set it realigns itself, it gets sorted out, and then you tell it go. Yeah. And it does its thing, and it's automatic. So once you pick your target, once it's acquired it just automatically starts collecting the images.
Yeah. Well, I have an idea, and at the end of the program, I'm going to run it by you, Rich, because I've got a video on something I've been talking about for, 6 or 7 years. They finally made it. And I shouldn't say finally, it's been out for a couple years. So I'm going to see if we can apply that technology to your telescope. But Justin also says, just put it on the roof and have it open automatically. We'll talk, Justin. I've got a video I want to show you for that. Cool. By the way, I will say this: Rich and I had a conversation. If you made it this far, you're probably a committed listener. So, Rich and I had a whole conversation about his VW EV in the beginning of the show. I'm going to put that at the end. So if you've made it this far, and we say goodbye, everybody. Hang tight for a second. I'll stick that on the end of the program. You normally, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you would normally get that through your regular channel, so you might listen to it. But it was just so good, we're going to stick it on the end. Joe out in chat says we had about 3 minutes of totality there in north central Arkansas. He says every town here in the path had some sort of event happening. The talk over fear of traffic effectively shut down the town I work in. It was absolutely dead. And then he said most businesses closed, which is too bad. This could and should have been a boom, right? Boom for them.
And maybe it was the day before and the day after. I mean, they were talking about that in Dallas as well. Dallas, on every interstate, it was like, do not stop during totality. They were warning everybody not to stop. They had a huge event downtown Dallas. Me and Daryl drove down Dallas after we kind of scoped things out. we on the Sunday. So the eclipse was on a Monday. So on the Sunday, we drove downtown Dallas. He took me down through Dealey Plaza and School Book Depository and that kind of stuff. There was a massive event going on. There was tons of people downtown Dallas enjoying, and they had food trucks and food booths and, you know, that kind of stuff. So there was no doubt. I don't know what the numbers are, but it must have had an impact in general. You know, people traveling, like we saw the Airbnb swath, people traveled into the path to be able to see it. So, you know, there was some level of money spent somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. I asked this question, but I don't remember what you said. The future, what else are you thinking? Anything else that you're thinking about for the future of this thing?
Another hobby I've picked up in the last year, I've started doing recreational drone flying.
Oh, okay.
I got myself a DJI Mini 4 Pro. So the Mini 4, 8 beautiful pictures, beautiful video. It's got built-in routines, right, where you just launch it and you give it a point of focus, and it will automatically do this, you know, about a 3 or 4 minute flight pattern in different ways to create a hero video. They call it master shots. It'll follow. So you tell it to follow this and it'll track you and do some flying around you as well. I'm really having a lot of fun with doing time lapse. I can do time lapses on this thing, so I can launch. Now I live in the flight path of a commercial airport that's about 5 miles that way. So I'm only allowed to fly up to 200 feet recreation in this flight path because of that fact. Most the ceiling for recreational flying is 400 feet. Okay. And so, but I can get up to 200 feet, get a shot of the sunset, sunrise, the fog rolling through the trees in the neighborhood. I've been having a lot of fun with that. My pastor even let me fly it in the church to get hero images for our 150th celebration we're having here in about a week. It's just been a lot of fun to kind of learn how. I think all of us have had those stupid little cheap drones, you know, that you can control with an app that you can hardly control at all. This thing is so savvy. I mean, it knows where it's smart about where it's at. It uses GPS. So it records its home spot where it launches from. When it gets to a certain point, it's going to come home. You don't have to do a thing. It's going to come back and land before the battery dies. Yeah. It's got 360-degree obstacle detection. So it can sense things above it, below it, and to its sides. That's why I got the Pro, because it had that. The other one didn't have as much. And it's really fun to fly. Yeah. I've been having a lot of fun with that. Yeah. I've picked that up as a kind of another secondary hobby and stuff. Cool.
Let me actually a perfect segue. We didn't plan it this way, but let me segue into this because this is going to kind of a combination of two things we're talking about. I'm going to ask for your opinion on this. So, years ago, I said I wanted a drone that would sit on my back deck, and when the cameras around the house would detect something was going on, it would shoot off the drone and start recording. And we are finally there. So let me show this video. So you can see it's in a case. The case opens up and this thing shoots out as it's running around. This is Sunflower Labs home awareness system. I'm hoping I don't get a copyright strike on YouTube for showing this, but you can kind of see it's got some sensors around the yard. If it detects something is going on, the unit opens itself up. So these sensors are always on. Mm-hmm. And this thing pops out of its case. There you go. You see it again. Fully autonomous, starts taking pictures and starts using identification to see people or pets or whatever those kinds of things that are going on. This is where I was thinking of that's pretty big. I was thinking of your telescope. How cool would it to be in a case like that? That would open up. Again, if you're listening to the audio, you got to come over to the video and watch this. How cool would it be to have your telescope in a case on the roof that would open up? You could do some things with it, and then at night it would close up. Would you feel comfortable doing something like that?
I think if it was in a location that wasn't easily accessible, right, that you didn't have to worry about just anybody driving up to it or walking up to it, that looked like it's mounted on the ground, but I assume it can be mounted most anywhere. So elevating it and it's weatherproof, it said, so you could elevate it, get it up on the roof of your garage maybe or something like that. Well, that's not, unless somebody drags a ladder out, right? That's not going to be. And they certainly do make, you can go online and search for observatories, you know, and find small observatories you can just drop on a pad of concrete that have sliding, you know, you slide the door open to be able to start observing. Not so autonomous, but there's plenty of telescopes that are autonomous. So it can't be too far of a connection to where you might be able to have the technology available where you could. Now, nothing in the night sky moves fast, right? Except for the Starlink train and ISS.
Yeah.
So, you know, things pass fairly, you know, slowly as they rotate or as we rotate. And so it's not as if you've got to have an alert and launch immediately because there's somebody in your backyard. But if you wanted to kind of have it hooked up to a power source, have the interface to it to say, okay, tonight I want you to do X, Y, Z. I want you to go collect the Orion's Nebula, maybe Andromeda Galaxy, and maybe one other thing. And then it would fire, kind of like plugging in my car to charge. I tell it the preferred time, and it starts charging at the preferred time. I don't have to wait up. I don't have to remember. When I wake up in the morning, my car's got its 80% charge. So I would think that's not that far of a jump, a leap, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just, as I was looking at this, I was like, this would be a cool little device to open up for your telescope, stay open, right? Do its thing. Maybe you've got the weather, you know, you've got that little device on it to kind of keep the moisture or whatever. Cause you know, in the evenings, sometimes that moisture can set in. What do you think about this drone concept? You were talking about drones having an automated based on sensors. I wanted mine based on my cameras. So the cameras would detect something outside and it would shoot that thing up and then start identifying it. What do you think about that?
It's a clever idea. You know, I'm trying to think about usage scenarios. Because that one of the things I was warned by a good friend when I started flying the drone, he cautioned me. He said, Rich, make sure you go do your training. Make sure you get your certification. You don't have to get a license to fly recreationally. And this drone is smaller than 249 grams. So that's the cutoff. If you're 250 or higher, you have to get a license to fly the drone. 249 is not required. And of course, there are recreational limits, you know, and they make great apps now. So I've got an app that tells me wherever I'm at, I plan a flight. I plan to fly my drone. So I go to this app and I tell it where I'm at and what I'm planning to do. It will tell me if I'm free to fly. It will tell me if I have height restrictions in that zone, right? Because like I told you, I can only fly to 200 foot because I'm in the flight path of this airport. Typical recreational limit. I have taken it to 400. I took it somewhere to do some drone shots, and I was able to fly it up to 400 feet. And that's up there. It's pretty cool. So I would think, you know, having that as an option in a certain scenario, if you're concerned about that type of thing, maybe if you're remote and you travel and you're a business guy, you know, is that helpful to your family in some way? I don't know. That may be connected to your alarm system. When it detects that unknown person flying around, maybe it triggers all the doors and windows to lock. Well,
when we had the guys, and I forget the security company I had the guys on, I have to look this up, but we had the guys on and they talked about the difference in their security system is it wasn't fully automated. So the pictures would come in and a human would look and say, do we need to act? Because there was a lot of false positives, right? On some of these things. And so, you know, you kind of think about that, but I think about the progress. It's been a couple of years since we had them on, but I think about the progress. I'm sure somebody in the chat room will tell me who that guest was. The progress we've made with AI detection on some of these cameras and it being able to identify some of those might be nice. You know, I get the Ring cam, you know, every day when my wife and daughter leave the house to go to work or packages are delivered, it can identify a package now. The Ring cams, hey, there's we've seen a package, right? Come in. But on that drone, listen, the video I showed was actually from 2020. So this is a couple years old. At the time, that was a $10,000 security system. Wow. So I am sure not that much today. Maybe $5,000 to do something like that. It's more of a cool factor for me of what could be done. I don't know if I'd spend here in Bellevue, Nebraska. My Ring cams, I just see my neighbors. You're right. We have a pretty safe street. But I just thought that was cool technology in a way, as I was looking at this, planning to show this video here at the end of the program, thinking, and then I saw you with your telescope, and it was like, put the telescope inside. You basically are creating your own observatory.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right on that. Tony Rayner says out in chat, he said he had his drone automatically tracking his Tesla.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
How long on your drone, how long can you put that up and have it up in the air tracking something?
I think I get, depending on how much the winds are and how much it has to hold stability and move around and stuff, I probably get 30 to 40 minutes of flight time per battery, give or take. I don't have the high-end batteries. No, it's not. For the kind of stuff I do. I was recently doing some drone shots for a video project, and there are so many. It's even got an option where you can just pick waypoints, right? Fly it to a point, say, okay, that's one waypoint. So it will remember the camera angle and the altitude and position. And then you fly it manually to another point and mark that as a point. And you set up all these points to set up a route. And then you bring it back to home to the original point and say, go. And start recording, and it remembers, it moves the camera as it needs to. They're smart in that way. Like I said, these hero shots I've gotten for some shots for this video project are just amazing. And all I had to do was say, look at this spot right here and it goes far out in circles. It comes in medium in circles. It comes in close in circles. It does a rocket launch in that point in the, so it does various different modes. And then it puts together the video in the drone to then allow me to connect and download.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Technology's changed so much.
Oh yeah.
I recently moved, and so I had a new ADT system installed here. Compared to the system I had 20 years earlier installed, which was just basically door and window sensors and a control pad at the door. I now have the outdoor cameras. I have and they're of course, ADT's working with Google now, so it's Nest stuff. Yeah. So I've got a backyard camera, I've got a side view camera, and I've got a front door camera, and all that and I got an internal one downstairs. All that smartness is built in. It knows my face, right? Mm-hmm. So it says "rich scene on living room camera," or then it detects the packages, even to the point where, hey, that package isn't detected anymore on the front porch after I pick it out.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of the mowing guys, the yard guys, and my neighbors walking their dogs. But so far, but is that meant to be a security thing or an awareness thing? I rarely use it to talk to people who come and ring my door, though. Yeah. And you could. I open the door and call. I don't get that many people. I don't know if I've had somebody come to my door in 2 years. Non-package delivery, right? Right. And we bought one of those container boxes and then moved it off the deck, not off the deck, but away from the camera, so we get a better camera shot of it that way. Gotcha. And then where they would normally put the packages, we just have a little sign that says, "Can you use the box?" Now, I've had our FedEx guy who delivers HelloFresh. He met me at the door one time and he's like, "Hey, can we talk?" And I'm like, "Sure." He's like, "Hey, sometimes like the HelloFresh packages are really awkward to put in the box. Is it okay if I put them on the step here? I'll ring the doorbell." And since COVID, there's almost always somebody home. And so I was like, "Yeah, sure." So it's kind of it's nice to work with the delivery folks they kind of get it where we want it. That delivery box isn't always convenient if you've got a really heavy, wide box. It doesn't really, it's awkward for our delivery folks. I almost feel like they should get a tip, for like, that was hard. It was hard for me to get it out. And, so you kind of wonder, we put it in a day when we were never home. And like I said, since COVID, there's almost always someone home. So you kind of go, well, okay, we'll kind of leave it, we'll kind of leave it out there. So no, good conversation. Rich, let me ask you one more conversation before we wrap it up. You're mentioning you're retiring from Microsoft coming up this July. You and I and the community have spent a lot of time talking about Microsoft. You haven't done that in a while. You haven't been blogging, haven't been talking about it. Windows 11 in the time, I think since June, we've seen Windows 11 come along. We may have whatever the precursor to that is coming. We've seen Copilot do some amazing things, right? We're
on the edge of seeing Copilot, a version of Copilot in Windows for ARM coming up. Like, I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff. As you think about that space, anything you're really keeping your eyes on the Microsoft side of things, or that makes you really excited about the future of what they're doing?
So one of the things I did get to be part of last year is that we actually added an AI feature to Microsoft Q&A. Something to help people find the answers they're looking for. So it uses it uses the only the information on Microsoft Learn in Q&A and across Learn to source its answers. It's not generally a web search.
Right.
And so that was a lot of fun to kind of be in, to experience that at the ground level. You know, they said, hey, let's do AI. We put a lot of focus on it prior to Microsoft Build last year. Being on the inside, watching these events go to this build, because I used to be on the outside watching the build announcements, watching the Ignite announcements, and especially covering it as a journalist for those 7 years. So to be on the inside and watch that process from concept to launch was the coolest thing in the world, right? It's just a lot of cool factor to it. But now you just watch. If you watched any of Microsoft Build this year, and this is not me as a Microsoft employee, this is just in general watching Build as it happened alongside of all you all, right? Because we watch the amount of the Copilot and AI type stuff that is starting to become part of every product platform, every service. I'm really intrigued by those Copilot PCs, the ARM-based devices, because, you know, for the longest, do you remember what the first ARM-based device Microsoft launched? Hardware?
Windows RT?
Windows, the Surface RT, right? Did not do a whole lot of well, right? Had a big write-off, right? That they had to write off, $1 billion write-off. And probably, as Microsoft has done in many things, before its time, right? Launch an RT first. It confused people. It probably would have been better to launch normal Windows on a device and then maybe come to the ARM stuff. I think ARM is ready for prime time now based on these Snapdragon chips and what they're able to do. I have a Copilot Plus PC on order.
Oh, cool.
So waiting for it to get here.
It just came out, right? In this last week.
Just got announced at Build, right? 2 weeks ago, they announced them. They start arriving on June 18th. Okay. That's everybody, Surface, as well as all the OEMs. That's the other, notice that. Notice how many OEMs are launching these ARM-based devices. It's not just Microsoft on a Surface launching these chips. Dell, HP, all of the big OEMs are launching. If you saw the slide in the presentation on the day they did the product launch the day before Build, massive amounts of partnerships in launching these devices. So I think that's a good indicator that even the OEMs are confident in the capabilities of these systems, because these new minimum specs, right? Having the NPU that can handle 45,000 operations a second. Minimum RAM of 16 gig and a minimum hard drive of 512, right? SSD. The Surface Pros are sharp. They've now finally got the wireless keyboard for it and all that stuff. I'm really excited. I've actually got 2 on order because I could not decide which for sure. So I've ordered a 13.8 inch with 16 gig of RAM and a 512 gigabyte hard drive in sapphire. I love blue. I love that blue color. But then I've also ordered the 15-inch black with the maxed out specs. So the 1 terabyte drive, 32 gig of RAM, and of course the Elite, both of them with the Elite ARM device chip. So I'm excited about this new hardware because I think the potential is, now there's a whole lot of other issues going around the devices and some of the features that were announced, right? And I'll choose not to dive down into that rabbit hole. At least for another month or so, until my last day. No, you know, and again, it's once again, interesting being in after having been on the outside so long looking in, and I probably said this back in April of 2022, but being on the outside for so long looking in, having been inside of Microsoft as part of the company and part of the product teams and how we develop products and how resources are managed and everything, I'm so much clearer now on why certain things happen and don't happen, right? Because it's the nature of the business. And I think more than anything, that has allowed me to just kind of be more aware of why we see certain things that we see them when we see them.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. It has been a blast to work for Microsoft and to be part of that and have this opportunity. I am looking forward to being wrapped up and done. It's that time for me.
Yeah.
But it has been a blast. And so that hardware I'm really excited about. And I'm excited about it because it's not just a single little device of Microsoft launching Surface RT, but it's multiple OEMs invested right from the get-go.
Yeah.
So I think this is a turning point for compute, right? For silicon, because what's this going to do for Intel and AMD on the long run?
Yeah. Well, and maybe it'll push, certainly Apple on there with their
stuff. Yeah. With
their stuff is their M processing stuff is lightning, right? I mean, it's so good. And so as we think about some of those things, do you know in this ARM architecture, is that all on a single bus, or are they separate process? With the M stuff from Apple, that's all kind of one unit basically, right? They're all
I know that the processor is a separate chip, the NPU is a separate chip, and I'm sure there's buses and I haven't dug into the details there, but
yeah, no, I just thought of that. I thought, oh, maybe this is a little bit of a nod to what Apple's doing with the M1, 2, 3, and 4.
I think, I've got a Mini back there, and I think it's an M3 is what I got, because I wanted to do some Apple experience and work and stuff like that.
Do you think your time at Microsoft will make you better? I don't want to say it that way, but think you'll be differently prepared for what you want to do in podcasting and blogging?
I think so. I think tremendously so. And not that I'm going to walk away from Microsoft. I'm not under any kind of non-disclosure thing. Company confidential information is company confidential information, and I'm not privileged to share that.
For sure.
But the insight into how because I used to sit on the outside and question, well, why not? Why don't you fix this little thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I now understand why those little things can't always be fixed. Right. So I think it gives me a better perspective. The experience of being with Microsoft for the time I have been brings a different experience to my looking from the outside.
That's super great. We'll look forward to you, Rich, coming back to some more of those things. Like I said earlier, I think there'll be some folks who are cheering and say, yeah, Rich is back. And of course, let us know as those things come back, and we'll celebrate that as well. One last comment, Joe in the chat says, still holding a grudge.
Would this phone be the first ARM? Yeah, technically, I think you're right, Joe.
Yeah, you might be right. Well, you know what? I think some of those things, listen, Microsoft experiments with a lot of different things.
Very much so.
And you can't, they just do this publicly where other companies just do it privately.
Correct.
And I just think, they had tablets long before the iPad.
Way before.
Long before the iPad, right? And so and so whether you choose to experiment and let the world learn from you, which is, I think, what happens a lot of times, they do their things, they spend money, they do the R&D publicly in a lot of ways. Or like some other companies, you choose to keep your stuff secret until it's 100% ready. That's your choice. That's kind of the way it works. And so you get that opportunity to do that again. Rich, can you hang on for a sec as I close this up? All right, let me do this really, really quick. If you want to join our Discord group, the friendliest Discord group on the internet, you can do that as well, theaverageguy.tv/Discord. And I do appreciate what you guys do out on Discord. It's not too noisy, but there's a lot of great conversations going on, and everybody's nice to each other. So thanks for doing that on Discord. A little bit of remnants of the old home server show forums. Remember that, Rich? Remember that stuff? That's a whole other conversation. Leave us a message, homegadgetgeeks.com, a little 30-second message if you want to get something in here. And like I said, or you can send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Of course, don't forget the averageguy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from folks that you know and that you trust. Visit maplegrovepartners.com for plans. I think Christian's still doing it for like $10. Might be the best inflation fighting internet plan or hosting plan in the world right now. Check it out, Maple Grove Partners, all one word.com. Appreciate you guys out there coming out live. Tony, Joe, saw Ken a little bit earlier, Justin, Good to see you. Rich, always great to spend time with you.
Good
Thanks.
catch up.
Yeah. Very good to have you on, and thanks for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Yep.
We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. I am off next week. We have a big conference here in Omaha that I am a part of, and for the work, I've got to do a whole bunch of work there. But on the 13th, Aaron Lawrence is coming back. We're going to look at those bird feeders that I talked about. I got this bougie hummingbird feeder that was $200, but it's super cool. So Aaron and I are going to talk about that. And then a good friend of mine, Adam Hickman's going to come on. He's got an interesting average guy fitness thing that's a little bit of tech associated with it. He'll be back here, or he'll be with me first time on the 20th of June. I want to thank everybody for coming out. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. I think Tony says glad to have Win OBS on there. It's been a while.
Tony has been having a great adventure in the EV world.
Yeah,
I've been watching Twitter sharing about his Tesla.
Yeah.
I went electric. I went electric last year.
What'd you get?
I bought a Volkswagen ID4.
Oh,
so the Volkswagen full electric.
Yeah.
I was looking to go electric. Was doing my research. Looking at the different options and stuff. And I'm a big VW guy. I've been buying VWs for years. And when I learned that they had one, I started doing my research. And I tell you what, I went to the lot on a Friday. They had just received this car on the Wednesday, and I drove it off the lot that day.
Wow.
Yeah. I did have home charging installed, right? With a level 2 charger. And for my type of commuting around town, it is perfect.
Right.
It is really perfect.
Yeah. Have you taken in very many long trips?
I haven't done many long. I've driven to Gainesville, which is a couple hours, hour and a half or so from here. But I know exactly where the charger is going in that direction that I need to, if I need to. But I could charge it here and do back and forth to Gainesville, no problem.
Yeah.
I am taking it in July on a long road trip. I'm driving from Jacksonville to Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh.
With a stop in Louisville to see my sisters.
Wow.
And VW has a network of chargers called Electrify America. I believe those came about as a part of their penance for the Dieselgate.
Oops. Yep.
So they have a network that is growing. And so when you purchase the vehicle, you get 3 years of free 30-minute charging sessions.
Wow.
And so in 30 minutes on one of their hyperchargers, I can be at 80%. Charge from 10%,
which is kind of where you want to be anyways.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And we only have one in Jacksonville, unfortunately. But having home charging is the really big key, I think, to EV ownership, right? Because especially if you do that local commuting kind of stuff, long distance, I'm looking forward to my trip. I know I have stations every 120 or so miles, well within my 80% range. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking forward to the opportunity to make the longer trip.
Did you see much of a change in your electric bill when you started charging the car on a regular basis?
No. So, a couple months ago, I get that Google info every month of how long you drove, how far you drove and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had driven just over 1,500 miles in March throughout the month. And so I did a comparison to gas because my charging costs like, to get to 80%, I probably pay less than $3 for that charging. I'm on their program here in Jacksonville. They have an EV loyalty program. So as long as you charge during non-peak, you get a 0.03 cents a kilowatt hour or something. It's really ridiculous.
3 cents or 3 cents a kilowatt.
Yeah, 3 cents a kilowatt hour. Yeah. Compared to my apartment that I lived in for a little while, about a year and a half ago, a charge would cost me $40. They were $1 a kilowatt hour. It's ridiculous, but it was what it was. Mm-hmm. And so I compared, I probably saved between $200 and $250 a month in gas cost compared to what it cost me to charge electrically. And by the way, I'm a member of the rebate program. So as long as I don't charge during peak hours more than 3 times in a month, I get $7 a month from the electric company.
Wow.
Which covers maybe half of my charging in the month.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you can set in the app the times to charge,
Correct.
so it automatically does
in
that
the
for
car.
you.
Actually, well, the app, yes, but also I have it set in my car, so I have preferred time set in the car schedule. So when I pull up and I back up to the garage, I just simply choose to charge at preferred times, plug it all up, and then it automatically will start charging tonight at about 10:30 and be finish a few hours later.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say, I'm assuming for you, peak is during the day when it's
That is
hot.
correct. Yeah.
And
So
then, of course,
10:30 or 11 at night until 6 a.m. is off peak.
Yeah. You ever? So have you thought solar for some from daytime charging, or have you gone down that path?
I now live in a townhome, so I'm a shared unit. I'm in the in unit of a 6-unit building, and so we are allowed by the homeowners covenant to install solar if we so choose. And I'm in a great spot for solar because the left side of my house faces the east, so it gets all that morning sun until it's overhead and going away.
Mm-hmm.
However, I then take ownership of my part of the roof rather than the HOA covering the roof.
Got it.
So I don't think it's making my electric bills did not shift drastically.
Okay.
In my charge since I've been charging.
Do you know what you normally pay a kilowatt or what your normal electrical?
Top of my head, no. I could probably find out on the JEA website, but I average $180 or so a month for my electric bill, and that's everything. That's my AC. That's
not bad. So that's not bad.
It's very reasonable.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a fairly progressive electric company that is kind of thinking through some of these things. And,
hey, they gave me a rebate on the installation of my level 2 charger.
Oh, nice.
So they gave me a list of recommended companies to do the job. So an electrician came out and installed the conduit and everything to get the charger on. I ordered one of Electrify America's units and mounted it myself. Plugged it into the plug they ran for me, and then of course the lead goes out to the car.
Right.
And but they are, and then I mean that install cost me maybe $900 give or take, and they rebated me 45% of that for doing the level 2 charger.
Tax credits for those?
No, that was just a flat out rebate.
No, but I mean, were you able to also take?
I made too much money last year to get the $7,500 tax credit.
Shoot,
the rebate. Right, because that was a big selling point, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, cool, but then I made too much money for it. I didn't realize it had that income. Gate.
I didn't know. I thought it was that way for everybody.
I missed it.
Well, that's a bummer. Well, hey, I mean,
but still, I'm very pleased. The car drives great. It's a they call it an SUV. It's like a crossover, but it's got a great wheelbase. It's great handling. It's a single motor, so it's front wheel drive, but it's got some pep to it.
Single wheel or double wheel on the
double wheel drive.
Double wheel drive. Okay, and front.
They sell a model. Maybe it is rear wheel drive. I'm about knucklehead when it comes to cars.
It's okay.
It's not a computer, but it's a great handling car. I enjoy driving it. It's nothing fancy, it's not that ludicrous speed Tesla has advertised sometimes. But it is so functional, and it gets me around where I need to go. Only once have I ever screwed up in my charging routine, where I end up finding myself. In fact, it was the night of the aurora that everybody was seeing the aurora. And I was convinced I'm going to this dark sky site out west of us, and I didn't have enough charge to get there. And so I waited 24 hours and then made the drive out there, and the aurora was gone. But so once in a year of ownership have I had an issue where I couldn't get. And the motorcycle sits in the garage. The Harley's in the garage. It's got a tank full of gas. So if I ever get desperate, I've got a way to get somewhere.
you get somewhere. Do you ever worry about do you fire it up from time to time?
I do. Yeah, I do try to get out on it. Not as regularly as I have been, but I'm hoping to get out on it more regularly.
Yeah. Kind of nice. Have you thought about could you, as an example, could you have a solar generator, a pretty beefy one, that you could say in that case you forgot to or whatever? Could you throw that in the car and plug a charger into it and take it with you, drive wherever you're going, and then let it recharge the car?
I guess you could. The car came with a level 1 charging cord. So 110, basically you plug into any outlet. And of course, it's not going to charge as fast as the level 2. And of course, that doesn't charge as fast as a hypercharger. But so I've got a cord in the car that all I got to do is plug it into a 110. That will give me emergency, power to give a charge, especially if I have time.
Right.
So
pretty slow. Some of the new solar generators and they say solar because you can plug solar into them, but
Gotcha.
some of the new bigger batteries, right, have 240 or 220.
Oh,
Right,
gotcha.
you can to the thing as well, and a 2000 or 4000. They're pretty beefy,
Yeah.
right? They're still heavy and big, but I always thought of, could you rig, could you bring that
Did you
along
see
with
the
you?
picture? Some guy mounted a gas power generator on the back of his Tesla,
Yeah,
and he charged his car as he was driving, running the gas generator.
That seems kind of crazy, doesn't it? It seems a little.
I think that was purely just for sheer doing it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, and you think of the new Cybertruck that has been showing up a lot on my Twitter feed because of Tony. There's just been, for whatever reason, and then I think in our Discord group, folks it's been showing up in more places, and I think so. Pictures have been showing up, and that seems like that'd be a perfect Cybertruck implementation.
Oh, right. Stick it in the back.
Gas generator. Stick in the back, and those easily have a 220 plug on them, right? That you could get some pretty fast charging if you wanted to do
I will tell you though, since starting to drive an electric myself, it used to be a rare event that you saw a Tesla. It was significant when you saw a Tesla on the road, for instance, here in the area. Yeah. I don't not see an electrical car, and not multiple of them now when I go out anytime, when I make to the church or something like that. You almost always see multiple electrics, as before, a couple years ago, it was the odd one you might see. Oh, look, a Tesla, right?
Yeah. They may have reached some level of market saturation because both the numbers are down on these a little bit. The sales numbers are down a little bit, right? And just thinking about everybody who wanted to buy one probably got one in some form or fashion. Prices rocketed up on EVs when all the car prices went up 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
I think that put some people out of it. I have noticed in the last, 6 months maybe, Tesla cutting their prices as we're returning. We're coming off that bubble, that weird auto bubble caused by mostly, I think, by the chip shortage and whatever COVID stuff.
And that was going on. Gas cars too, right?
Oh, for sure.
Were being sold without certain features because of the chip.
Yeah, and they would give you, a lot of trucks were sold this way. They'd give it to you and say, "We'll let you know when we have the chip, you can bring it back and we'll install it." But these things won't work until that chip comes in, type deal. So, you kind of makes you wonder. Then, okay, maybe we'll see. There was, I think, a decrease when the prices went up. Maybe as prices are coming back down, we'll see. How long have you had the VW?
April a year ago.
Okay.
Maybe late March, early April a year ago, I got it.
Yeah. And how many miles do you think
I'm coming up on 19,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So almost 20 in a year. So you've put some, that's good mileage. You're commuting.
I 6-7 days a week, I do a 30-minute commute back and forth to the church. Okay. And so that's my kind of drive away from the house. I work from home. Yeah. So, and then the local errands, don't count for much, but yeah, it's, the dealership tried to mess with me the day I bought it. He was like, "Okay, we're going to set up your first oil change." And so, I went, "Huh?" And then of course it caught on.
Oh yeah.
VW is pretty good. I mean, I think I get every maintenance checks are every 10,000 miles compared to, say, a gas engine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which is a lot shorter than that.
Six,
and then I think I have either 2 or 3 years of free maintenance from VW on it.
Yeah.
Battery warranty is 8 years.
Oh, that's good.
Not mileage limited.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a comfortable purchase. If I get 8 years out of this car, and I'm sure I'll get more than that, but I was very happy with it all around.
Oh, good. That's good. Tony in chat says he leached 110 off his mom when he's visiting her this weekend, right? Yeah. I just want to. Do you keep an extension cord in the?
I don't keep an extension cord. I keep the level 1 charger, but I'm staying at my sister's in Louisville, and so I said to her, "Hey, you got a 110 plug in your garage?" And now I couldn't do the 220 but 240 because it's a whole unit, but. Yeah. So she does, and I said, "I'll bring a heavy-duty extension cord so I can run it out to the car and at least give it a trickle charge."
Yeah,
because I can always ride with them to the places we go around Louisville. Right. And Louisville has 3 chargers, and Indianapolis is only an hour away. I'm actually going to arrive in Louisville based on my plan with plenty of charge
Mm. Well, good.
I think you give it a shot on the long run.
Yeah. Well, and there are some options with that, and you know,
plenty of charging options.
I have if you ever in Omaha or in Bellevue, I've got an outside plug. You can just pull up in my driveway and plug in.
And there's a lot of those around. I mean, unfortunately, 110 charging is really trickle.
And what would it take? What would it take at 110 to fully? Let's say 80%.
It takes roughly about 3 or 4 hours for me to get to an 80% charge from 20 25%. Yeah. So it basically double that, I think. For the most part, it's all about the voltage and the wattage stuff. But my 240 is
we could burn some steaks. I mean, we could burn some steaks and enjoy some time together. So,
and that's what you do when you're on a road trip. When you got to plug in for a charge, you can either do longer charging sessions and run your battery down lower to get to those chargers, or do more stops, shorter charging sessions to top off.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, that's cool. Well, I'll take this segment and put it on the end of the show. No, we haven't even started yet.
I know, right?
It's just great. We'll throw it on to the end of the show.
I blame Tony.
We'll right on. It's good conversation. We'll throw it on the end of the show. So let me kick things off here and we'll get started, Rich. Here we go.